Hi everybody. I'm going to attempt to explain the female reproductive system and especially menstruation and ovulation. So really quick review, we've got our parts, ovaries, two of them on either side, fallopian tubes connecting the ovary to the uterus, so there's a fallopian tube on either side. Of course, uterus is here, cervix is this area, and vagina. Functions of the female reproductive system. Why do we have a female reproductive system? What is its job? Produces female gametes or sex cells or eggs. Remember, gametes are haploid cells. They have half the number of chromosomes. Secretes estrogen. So secrete means to release. It releases estrogen, which is a main sex hormone. So you have to associate estrogen with female reproductive system. That's super important. Female reproductive system supports a fetus as it develops before birth, and finally giving birth to a baby at the end of pregnancy. That is the whole purpose that we have a female reproductive system. Okay, quick review of their parts and their functions. Ovary stores and releases eggs. That's this part here. Fallopian tube is the passageway that connects for the egg. So the egg travels on the fallopian tube to the uterus. The uterus is where the baby develops. The cervix is what connects the uterus and the vagina is the passageway for sperm and also for the delivery of a baby. I forgot to mention one super important thing. Fertilization happens here in the fallopian tube. So the egg is coming down, the sperm is swimming up, fertilization happens in here. The sperm and the egg happily together will come down together and sort of nestle themselves up into the side of the uterus, and then that's how where the baby forms. So fertilization does not happen in the vagina, it does not happen in the cervix, it does not happen in the uterus, it does not happen in the ovary. It happens in the fallopian tubes. Fallopian tube, fertilization. Get it? Fallopian tube, fertilization. Super important, everyone always forgets it, so I thought I'd make a big point to say. Fertilization happens in the fallopian tubes. Okay. So we're going to talk about menstruation and how menstruation happens. The first thing you need to know is that there's a whole bunch of hormones that are involved, and I'm going to go through and we're going to explain this picture. So I know it looks really super confusing right now, but what you need to know is that the brain is communicating with the female reproductive system, and there are going to be hormones that are going back and forth between them. And each hormone, remember, sends a message. So I'm going to tell you where the hormone is starting, what part of the body it's starting in, what part of the body it's going to, and what the message is at each point. And so you'll be able to fill out that graphic organizer that we gave you. Okay, so the first hormone that we're going to talk about is called gonadotropin releasing hormone. You're never going to have to know all this, so you're just going to say it's called GnRH right here. And it starts at the hypothalamus in the brain. I know, menstruation starts in the brain, believe it or not. And basically the hypothalamus is sending a quick signal to the pituitary gland in the form of a hormone, and it's saying to the pituitary gland, get ready, pituitary gland, you got to start to get to work. And this is sort of a game of get ready, get set, go with all of these hormones and the messages that are being sent around. So the first thing that happens, the hypothalamus sends a quick signal to the pituitary gland right in the brain, and it just says, pituitary gland, you got to get ready. Okay. The second thing that happens, the pituitary gland releases a hormone called FSH, and that stands for follicle stimulating hormone. And it's going to go all the way to the ovary. So through the bloodstream, through our veins and arteries, these hormones are going to travel all the way down to the ovary. And remember, we have two ovaries, so it's going to go to this side and it's going to go to this side. The message here that this hormone, this FSH hormone is carrying, you can imagine it's kind of like maybe a little, like a little piece of paper or a text message. And the message says, get set, ovaries, get one of your eggs prepared to pop out. Remember, all of our eggs are stored in here, and only one egg a month is going to come out and possibly be fertilized and become a baby. So the FSH is just saying, get ready. Okay, the next thing that happens, the ovary is going to release estrogen. Now this estrogen is going to go into two places. So the first place estrogen is going to go back to the pituitary gland. So that's right here. Estrogen is traveling through the bloodstream. It's going back to the pituitary gland. So it's sort of like the ovary and the pituitary gland are having a conversation. And this message is going to say, hey, pituitary gland, you need to make some luteinizing hormone. And we're just going to call that LH, luteinizing hormone. The pituitary gland gets the message, it gets the estrogen, and it says, oh, I need to make some luteinizing hormone, so let me do that. So this is luteinizing hormone, or LH, and the luteinizing hormone gets made and goes back to the ovary. And the message here to the ovary from the pituitary gland in this ovary, either one of these ovaries, is go. Release the egg. It's time. Right? There's a huge surge in this luteinizing hormone in the woman's bloodstream, and that surge is saying to the ovary, you need to release the egg. It's time. So the egg is going to be released and it's going to come down the fallopian tube. Now, at the same time that the ovary initially releases estrogen to go to the pituitary gland, there's some estrogen that's going to go to the uterus. So ovary is going to release estrogen. Estrogen goes from the ovary to the uterus. Now, the important thing here is the message for the uterus. The uterus is kind of hanging out going, oh, all right, I think I got to do something. And it's saying, get ready for the egg. And when the uterus gets the message in the form of estrogen, the hormone, estrogen, it's going to start to build up. And this right here is the lining of the uterus, and there are cells that are going to start getting made, and those cells will turn into tissue, and layers of tissue will start to be formed in the lining of the uterus. Why, you might ask? Because when the egg comes down, if it's fertilized, it is going to need a nice, warm, comfortable, cozy place to nestle itself and grow for 9 months. And so that is going to be the lining of the uterus. So the uterus is kind of like a really nice cozy bed, and it's sort of unmade. There's no sheets, no pillows, no pillowcases. And when it gets that estrogen from the ovary, it's like, oh, I got to make the bed. I got to like put the pillowcases on, and I got to like put the sheets and get the down comforter and make myself really comfortable for the egg, because the egg's going to be coming down soon. Okay. The next thing that happens is the pituitary gland, the ovary has now an empty follicle. It's where the egg used to be. It's kind of like the shell of an egg. If you crack an egg and you have the shell left over, you've got the empty follicle. So this follicle that's in the ovary is going to release progesterone to the pituitary gland, and that's being shown here. So this is step 7. Pituitary gland gets some progesterone, and the message here is stop making luteinizing hormone. Remember that luteinizing hormone, or LH, was what was being produced after the pituitary gland got estrogen in order to stimulate ovulation and releasing of that egg. So it's got to get a message to stop making luteinizing hormone. Otherwise, it's like a little factory. It's just going to keep making it. So it gets the progesterone from the ovary, and it stops making luteinizing hormone. One of the last things that happens also is the empty follicle in the ovary produces another super important hormone called progesterone. Progesterone is going to go to the uterus, and the message there is this is the last chance you have to make a really cozy bed for the egg. So you better make sure that you're totally ready for the egg, because it's coming now. Okay. The last thing that happens is if the egg is fertilized, the embryo will release another hormone, and it will stop menstruation, right? It'll go up to the brain and it'll be like, don't do anything else. Hypothalamus, take a break for 9 months. And the whole process of menstruation will not happen, right? If the embryo, which is a developing baby, is formed. Otherwise, if that egg is not fertilized, menstruation will happen. And menstruation is the shedding of the lining of the uterus. So remember, the lining of the uterus is here, and it made all of these layers and layers and layers of tissue for that egg. Now, if that egg doesn't need it and it's not fertilized, that lining has to go away and has to decrease. Okay. I'm going to go back one step because I forgot to mention something super, super important. And that is right here. So when the egg is released in this step right here called ovulation. This is super important. This is the egg going from the ovary to the fallopian tube. It is a part of the cycle called ovulation. I want you to look at this word really carefully. It comes from a Greek or Latin word called ovum, O-V-U-M. An ovum means egg. And so you can see the word ovary, O-V-A, ovum, ovary, egg. So this is where the eggs are stored. And you can see ovulation. This is a process of the egg being released from the ovary into the fallopian tube. Super, super important process here called ovulation. It's like a mini process in this whole process of menstruation. Okay, so ovulation is when the egg is being released from the ovary to the fallopian tube. It happens once a month, and it's definitely a result of all these hormones and all these messages being being sent all over the body. Okay, thanks guys. Bye.